Hello, I'm constitutional attorney Katherine Henry, and welcome to this week's Constitution segment recap. This week, in our Restore Freedom Weekly episode 33 of the year 2022, I cannot believe 33 weeks have already gone by, but anyway, in this week's episode, which aired on Tuesday at noon Eastern Standard Time, we talked about appeals and addressed some surface types of issues. You know, we didn't go into the nitty-gritty of how to do an appeal or anything like that, but wanted to give you the ins and outs of the basics. So basically, we were covering, well, appeals and what you need to know. Today, again, this is just a Constitution segment recap. So if you want to hear the full discussion of all the sources involved and everything else, please watch the full episode. That's episode number 33, which is available on all of our mainstream, our main social media platforms where videos are allowed to be uploaded or streamed. So again, this is the main topic we covered this week, appeals, what you need to know. And more specifically, we were covering what are the main types of appeals, when can you file them, and what courts do you file them in. I'm going to go ahead and say just for a moment that as far as when can you file appeals and in what courts do you file different appeals, there is no simple answer, so you're not going to see us address that in this Constitution segment recap because the different appeals vary greatly, first of all, from state to state, but even within a state, the kinds of appeals and the courts to which you must file your appeal or in which you must file your appeal change drastically depending on what kind of case it is. And the time frame for filing those appeals changes drastically depending on the kind of case that it is. So we didn't get a chance to provide you the answer so much as to let you know it's something you need to look out for should you be in a situation where you might end up needing to file an appeal. So I sometimes will throw in some other resources that we covered in the main episode. So I did keep the Black's Law Dictionary definition of what an appeal is. Generally, I think we get the main concept. You're taking a decision that was made and you're trying to bring it up to the next highest level to have them reconsider that decision. The two kinds of appeals, the main types of appeals are interlocutory appeals and final judgment appeals. So basically where you're appealing something, a court order or a court decision basically that does not basically resolve, it's not the final outcome of the case. And then final judgment appeals where it is the final judgment, the main thing that resolves the main issues before the court in that particular case, and you're trying to appeal something within that final judgment. All right, so you have also another way of looking at it. There are two main types of appeals in terms of whether you can automatically appeal or not. So you have appeals by right and appeals by leave. Appeals by right are where you literally have a right to appeal. You don't have to seek any kind of permission from anybody in order to just file your appeal. Most interlocutory appeals, though, are not by right. Most times when you need to appeal, you essentially don't get that right to appeal until the case is just done and over with, and then you can take your case to appeal. And if you want the court, a higher court, to get involved in the meantime, you have to ask them for permission. Well, that gets to appeal by leave. Appeal by leave or appeal by application to leave, application for leave to appeal. Basically, you're asking the court for permission and whether you can even file your appeal. So the first part you need to realize, if you look for the word appeal in the Constitution, or let's take it this way, appeal or appellate, The word appeal appears nowhere in the Constitution, 0 times in the U.S. Constitution. The word appellate appears in Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution, where it's referring to the United States Supreme Court's jurisdiction to hear cases. So I included this text very small at the very beginning here, which goes through a bunch of different kinds of cases that the U.S. Supreme Court has jurisdiction to hear. And it talks about basically that in these cases, well, I guess let me say, these cases up here are cases where we're talking about federal court jurisdiction at all. Then once I get into the bigger text, then this part of the Constitution starts talking about where the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction, meaning when you go to file your case, you file it like just you go straight to the U.S. Supreme Court and you file it there. It's like they're the trial court. However, the part where we mentioned the word appellate in the U.S. Constitution comes out in that next sentence saying that, but all those other cases that we were talking about before, which is this big laundry list of cases that I put in the smaller print, those are the ones where the Supreme Court has appellate jurisdiction. So you can appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court for those types of cases, but you can't go to them in the first instance where they're acting like the trial court. So that is the only place in the U.S. Supreme Court where the word appellate appears. But we talked a lot this week about Michigan because although sometimes I try to focus heavily on Michigan and Florida and sometimes Minnesota or other cases where I've been, situations where I've been licensed in other jurisdictions, and I'll talk about what I know from those jurisdictions personally. In this case, it's such a confusing topic and it varies so greatly from state to state. Although I referenced Florida and Minnesota in today, in the topic that we're doing the recap for today, I didn't go into detail about what the Constitution requires for a reason. It gets complicated, and I also don't do that again today. First of all, if you're paying attention to the Wednesday Way to Get Involved challenge, then you would know that I challenged you yesterday to go and take a search of your own state's constitution and search for the word appellate and appeal and read all the parts in your own state constitution where those words are present. So I don't want to do all the work for you, especially if you happen to be in Florida or Minnesota wanting to participate in that Wednesday Way to Get Involved challenge. But I at least need to start somewhere and have something to show you. So in the state of Michigan, we focused on finding in the Michigan State Constitution the word appeal or the word appellate. And the word appeal actually, it comes up in several different places in the state constitution, primarily showing you the difference between federal and state constitutions and how they handle things like court jurisdiction. And just different things to look out for in the differences between the two. But just to keep it simple, I also kept this color-coded here, the purple provisions here, where we're talking about the Supreme Court jurisdiction in Michigan and the Circuit Court jurisdiction. Those are where the word appellate was used, whereas all of these in black are the word where the word appeal was used. And in the full video on Tuesday, we talked about a criminal defendant's rights. Well, what does that have to do with appeals? Well, it has everything to do with appeals, because if you are a criminal defendant and you have this whole laundry list of rights, which are included here in this screen, talking about equal protection and due process, privacy from the government, criminal trial rights, cruel and unusual punishment protections, bills of attainder protections, those kinds of things. If you are in that situation and your rights are being deprived, what are you going to do? You're going to appeal. So I talked about that was an example of the other kinds of constitutional provisions that are relevant to the topic of appeals, even though they might not directly talk about an appeal. Of course, this applies in civil cases too, your right to equal protection and due process and things like that. You still have those rights even though it might not be a criminal case. And then we had pulled this slide from last week's slides and talked about it in Tuesday's episode this week. But we asked the question, but is every single judge and every single prosecutor really required to ensure that all of those rights are protected, the ones that we just saw on the last screen? And this includes every single judge, trial court judges and appeals judges. And the answer is yes, because each of them was required to take that constitutional oath of office. And here are the parts of the U.S. and Michigan constitutions and Michigan state law that are requiring those particular officials to take the constitutional oath. So if you want to have any more information on this topic, I encourage you to watch the full episode from Tuesday. Of course, that's episode 33. I also encourage you or invite you to join us tomorrow for freedom fighting tools that we'll be sharing on this topic. And also go ahead and check out the legal briefs that we have on our website, because quite frankly, all but one are appellate briefs. There are briefs in appeals cases, and they're going to kind of give you that, especially at the very beginning, where if I'm an amicus, I don't think I necessarily talk too much about the court's jurisdiction. But if it was a case, for example, the Allegan County case where I was a party to the case, then I was required in my brief to go over how the court even had jurisdiction to hear that appeal. And so you might want to focus just on that part of those briefs to see how it plays out, how it's described, and all of that. So again, I'm constitutional attorney Katherine Henry, and this has been our Thursday Constitution segment recap. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please tune in tomorrow for that Freedom Fighting Tools Friday. I can't even say that. I'm not sure it even came out in English. But please do join us for tomorrow's segment, as well as what we have to offer on Saturday and Sunday. And don't forget to join us next Tuesday at noon for Restore Freedom Weekly for our next full episode, which will be airing live. Again, noon Eastern Standard Time, YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.